So number one, it's the second highest rated show on television behind only the NFL. Nothing on television across broadcast, cable, or streaming outrates Jeopardy other than the NFL.
It is Thursday, August 25th. It's the year 2022. This is the Token CEO podcast. I'm Erika, and we are excited to try to have the best episode yet. So first thing you can do if you're listening to this and you would like a one-on-one with me or to give me some feedback in a piece of your mind or give me some advice or vice versa, please go to Spotify or go to Apple and give us a rating and a review. If you give a rating and review, DM us on Instagram. You can DM me. You can DM Token CEO. We are going to give a handful of people a one-on-one, Token merch, Barstool merch, pretty much whatever else you want. So thank you to everyone who's done that. The responses have been so amazing, and we're so grateful, and it makes me so happy. So thank you to everyone who has done it. And if you haven't yet and you want a one-on-one or you'd like some free merch or you have something to say to us, please go ahead and do it. We have a cool episode today. We're talking about the boardroom. We have Q&A as always. We have one of my great friends and someone who I respect immensely. We have Micheal Davies, television producer extraordinaire, on the pod. And then we have a bunch of closing thoughts. So that's what we're doing today. All right, so let's start it with the boardroom. So here's the big thing in the boardroom, which is PENN has announced that they are going to buy the remainder of Barstool Sports. The acquisition will happen in February of 2023. PENN filed something called an 8K last week, which indicated their intention to buy Barstool, and they will pay $325 million to do it. So huge congratulations to Dave, Dan, Kevin, Keith, Hank, Fights, like all the original Barstool guys, and then everyone who has worked so hard to make this a reality and to make Barstool what it is today. PENN is coming off a record quarter. They generated $1.6 billion in revenue. And we're excited to be part of their future. I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago, which is they've rebranded to PENN Entertainment, which I think is a great step forward from PENN National Gaming. And what it really indicates is what our strategy is going to be, which is that we are about engaging and entertaining people. Could be in sports, could be in media, could be in entertainment, and then certainly will happen in sports betting and casino and iCasino. So we're super excited about that. It was kind of a weird, it was a little bit surreal, like a total non-event and an event at the same time. Like PENN sent a text, they're like, okay, we filed the 8K, like, just so you know, it's gonna go public. And then it was on Twitter. And I had like 5 minutes to let the Barstool people know, but it kind of doesn't feel real yet, to be honest. But what that got me thinking about is, what does it mean when your company gets acquired, or what happens when you're part of an acquisition? So the biggest acquisition right now in the media space anyways is obviously Discovery's, or not obviously, I guess, is Discovery's acquisition of Warner Media. So David Zaslav is the CEO of Discovery. He's the highest paid media CEO, I think, in the world. So go check out his salary. It's staggering. But anyways, he bought Warner Media. He's merging the two companies. And what he said about the merger is that he's going to achieve $3 billion in savings. So one of the things, and we'll get into this in a second, is why the acquisition? Like, why does one company buy another company? Do they buy it because they're going to die soon and they're a bunch of dinosaurs and they're better when they're stuck together? Do they buy it to buy revenues so that the stock performs better on the street? Do they buy it because the company wants a piece of technology or some type of acqui-hire? They want the talent inside of the company they're acquiring? Or do they buy it to move their business into a new place? When you look at the Warner Media Discovery deal and you look at Discovery's acquisition of Warner, it was really to create synergies and drive cost savings. So what's happening right now is obviously there's a huge amount of consolidation in television. Television is struggling, especially cable. And then the other challenge is there's all of these streaming products which are competing with one another. Everyone recognizes that there's only so many bundles that are going to work. And all of the big cable companies and streaming companies are trying to band together to have the best possible offering, the deepest possible offering, and be most valuable and most compelling to the consumer so that they agree to pay them every month. So in this case, they killed CNN Plus to save money. Chris Licht is the new head of CNN. He's saying that there aren't going to be layoffs, but the news this past week is that he's canceled one of the longest, I think actually the longest running show on CNN, which is a show hosted by Brian Stetler called Reliable Sources, which oddly enough is about the media. So if you're into the media business, there's a whole lot you can read into it. But the biggest thing I read into the Warner Discovery thing is that they're going to have to drive $3 billion in savings, which means that there's a lot of people that are going to lose their jobs. There's a lot of streamlining that has to happen. And there's a lot of duplication across the HBO organization, the CNN organization, the Discovery organization, the studios, you name it. And that there's probably a lot of people over at Discovery trying to figure out how they create what's called synergy, which basically means you're going to lose your job soon because there's a more efficient way to do this. There's a lot of people working to figure that out. So speaking of television, speaking of mergers, I wanted Micheal Davies to come on the podcast. Micheal Davies is probably the person I love most in television. I think he is a world-renowned phenom in production, period. He would call himself a television producer. I think he's so much more than that. I love him personally because I think he's fabulous. I think he's sharp. I think he's acerbic. I think he's silly. He's sensitive. He's flawed. He's brilliant. And he kind of has this aura about him that you just want to be part of. And I think what's made him so unbelievably powerful in television, he did Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? He's now running Jeopardy. He did Wife Swap. He created Comedians in Cars with Coffee. Like, the show list goes on and on and on, is that he's someone who understands why people are watching, what gets them to stay, and then how to work with producers and graphic artists and sound people and camera guys and directors to be able to create a product that entertains and delights people. He does this for himself with his podcast called Men in Blazers. He was my first introduction to television and our first introduction to television. He produced Barstool's 2 TV shows, which is The Rundown, which was on Comedy Central, and then the short-lived Barstool Van Talk, which was on ESPN2. But I thought he would be a great person to hear from. One, because what he's doing right now is very relevant, not only to the conversation about Warner and Discovery and media in general, but also in how to take something that's existed for a long time and breathe new life into it. And then also as someone who's really never fit in and worked really hard to be part of something and to create something and to have a legacy around it by virtue of work ethic and skill and vision, which is a lot of what we talk about on this pod. So we'll get into tips for acquisition. How do you manage your life when your company's being acquired? That's obviously something I'm going through. We'll get into that after this interview, but first we'll go to Micheal Davies.
Yeah, Jeopardy's a sport. So I'm running it just like a sport. I'm the commissioner of a league. So I'm not running it like, it doesn't work in any way like a game show, because it's not a game of chance. It's a game of skill.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a little bit of luck involved, but the fans react to it. So number one, it's the second highest rated show on television behind only the NFL. Nothing on television across broadcast, cable, or streaming outrates Jeopardy, other than the NFL.
So how are you recruiting players then? It's all about player recruiting.
So we have 110,000 people apply every year. We select 450. Our acceptance rate is 0.4%. Harvard is 5%. So we have a 0.4% acceptance rate. And people like Amy Schneider, Matt Amodio, Mateo Roach, our super champions from this past season, they are like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Kevin Durant. But we then switch out the way that Jeopardy works. We switch out all of our teams and all of our players every single year, and we go with completely new people.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is I'm building, and I've sort of revealed this sort of in Jeopardy, is my dream is the biggest franchise of Jeopardy isn't there, which is a primetime Masters League, which is live, where the greatest Jeopardy players of all time and currently play against each other. And then we would build a gambling market against that.
Of course. So you're going to do that?
Because we own all the data, and we own all the data. Yeah. So on the buzzer, which is...
Who comes up with the questions, Micheal?
We have a whole team of people who do that.
And then is it arduous to apply?
Oh, to apply to write or to apply to be on the show?
To play.
To play on the show, there's an anytime test. So you can go to jeopardy.com. You can take anybody can measure themselves and see how good they are at this. And it's hard. As we say, we have a 0.5% acceptance rate,
And
which
how
is
much based on brain, and how much is like you're a weirdo that people would like to root for or hate?
We could fill the entire show probably with people who just had perfect. It's kind of like being at Ivy League school. We could fill the entire show with people with perfect scores. But we don't. We look for people who have some story, who have some personality, who represent, contestant bases that we haven't seen before. Last week, I can't reveal this because I will spoil something that hasn't happened yet. But one thing I love is that you just end up with these situations where the occupations and the backgrounds of like one champion to the next champion are so extreme.
Yeah, it's like you can't make this shit up.
Places of, it's a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. Like the whole thing is just this. And it's a story of, I laugh all the time. You and I have spoken about this before, but I loathe, having spent my entire career in the United States, I loathe anti-American snobbery, European snobbery.
Yeah.
And one thing that you hear all the time is, American television is so dumb, or Americans are so dumb, Americans are so thick. And yet our highest rated show on television outside football, which is true everywhere in the world, the highest rated show everywhere in the world is whether it's soccer or Aussie Rules or NFL, it's always the code of football, which is dominant.
Yeah.
That's always the highest rated thing in every country in the world. That's true pretty much, except for India where it's cricket. And our second highest rated show is a quiz show where every single night we ask questions, we pose clues about medieval European history, 20th century art, Latin America, South American geography. And that is a massive TV hit. That wouldn't happen anywhere else in the world.
Why?
Because because this is about the American dream. It's about the American, I actually think that Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy represent these institutions that have been on the air, both of them, for 40 years, almost 40 years in Jeopardy's case, 40 years in Wheel's case. They represent two sides of the American dream. Wheel of Fortune is about sort of glamour and chance. It represents a sort of mid-America idea of like, oh, it's glamour, it's big, it's fun,
something
it's the
great
noise,
could
it's the sound.
happen.
And chance, and it could happen to anyone. And Jeopardy represents the idea of hard work and intelligence, smarts, a little bit of luck thrown in with the daily doubles, but it represents that other side. And they're the two sides of the American dream. It's why they've been so enduring.
I love that. Okay, so Micheal Davies, I don't even know how to describe you. Describe yourself.
6 foot 1.5, bald, 56 years old, follically challenged. Yeah, no, I've spent my life, despite the accent, I was often say I was born American in Southeast London, came to America at a young age, started playing tennis, went back to university over there, but always from the moment I set foot in the United States, this was the only place I wanted to live and make my career. I felt at home in America in a way that I never did in Britain, and have built my whole career here. Pretty much walked off a tennis court and started, built my career working in TV, first of all in development for Merv Griffin, then at the Walt Disney Company, Disney, and then when we acquired ABC, at ABC, a little bit at ESPN, not much, and then started my own company in the wake of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, buying the rights to that in the US, ran that show, built a company, sold that company, made a bunch of other shows, sold that company to Sony in 2008. I'm still running that company, Embassy Row, today, which is, as you know, very rare to sell a company.
Yeah, and still run it.
It's been 14 years and still run it. And I like the people I work for at Sony. They've given me the chance to run Jeopardy, which has, been a phenomenal experience. And here I am.
And tell people, what is it that you love about production?
The only thing I've ever, I haven't done every job, but the only job I could ever conceive of giving me the same adrenaline as playing competitive sport was being in live television.
Yeah.
And not everything I do is live. Some of it is pre-taped, but it's all multi-camera. It's as live, it's what you call it. Live to tape. And that's the only way that I've ever been able to, simulate, I played sports because everything else was boring. And yeah, I worked pretty hard at school. I studied, I had some other hobbies, but really the only time I wasn't bored was when I was playing sport.
Yeah.
And I have never been bored working in television. I've never been bored.
Yeah.
There have been challenges. You and I have been through some of them together, but I've never been bored.
I had my first experience in a truck with you, which that sounds very dirty. And it was it was when we went live on Comedy Central. And you're right, like it's addictive. It's so exhilarating, like kind of to your Jeopardy Wheel of Fortune. Like there's chance, there's hard work, there's the tightrope of being live and something going wrong. I loved it. I understand that intimately.
Yeah, absolutely.
So describe when you met us. Can you remember back to that?
So, yeah, I mean, I'd been aware of Barstool. And I think from actually in its infancy, I'd been aware of Barstool. And I was aware that you had come in. I think I'd listened to you. I'm plucking this out. This isn't something I know. Digiday? Did you do like a Digiday conference or a Digiday podcast? I had listened to you on something. I had clicked on it online and I'd listened to you speaking about Barstool on Digiday.
Okay.
It's how I knew about you. And, I was a fan of the brand, and I was a fan of specific talent and specific shows, and several of them. So I love what you were doing. And then I think, am I wrong? Did you guys get in touch with me through a mutual agency at the time? And then we ended up at my office in...
I think so. You're in the dark red room. Like it was
one of the dark red rooms.
I were like on the couch.
Yeah, we ended up there. And I think it was a meeting of minds. I think we had similar views. And I think we've done it in different ways. But I think we were, I think it was about being disruptive in sport. We both wanted to be disruptive in sport.
Yeah, it was so fun. When we met you, I think the Cherning guys had introduced us. I forget. But we were embarking on our first television show. Obviously, we had no idea what the fuck we were doing. But that was such a big moment for us because we, one, having you believe it, you were such a big deal, and having you believe in us was such a big deal for us. And then two, I think when we descended on Houston, we were doing a live show at the Super Bowl.
We're doing the rundown.
We had no idea what we were doing. It was like, we had gone through like 5 juniors to get that thing produced. Jen was the miracle that like made it happen. But
yeah,
it was the first moment for us where I think we realized we could be so big,
I think that, and it was magical. I cannot believe, I mean, in some ways I'm very relieved that they didn't continue to pick it up and put it on, because I'm not sure with everywhere that Barstool's gone that it ever would have, it feels like it would have been a looming disaster, whatever happened. But in terms of our partnership and the things we worked on, it was by far the most successful, even though I'm sure we'll talk about, pardon my take.
Let's
but it was the most successful because the possibility is that, and I think this was the original pitch, is I could help navigate you and guide you into like bigger television.
Yes.
And that was where I have the experience of taking, smaller brands and making them work in bigger TV. And that's sort of where at that point you guys wanted to go, or at least were interested in pursuing that. And that's where our, the sort of the skill sets, worked, not completely seamlessly, but overall I thought it was an incredibly successful show. And I think that Stoolies enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Comedy Central viewers enjoyed it. I thought it, and just the atmosphere, we just got the brand right.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing.
And that we did TV our way. And that's the thing that I think people don't see with Barstool, is that there was just there's something so earnest about it. Like there was something so earnest about that production, which is we were scared and we were excited and apprehensive.
Well, you also have your own rules though, Barstool, and it's like a game show format. I always think that good television is a combination of formality and informality. And it's what does that say? Cooking is all about like salt, fat, and acid, or acid, fat, and heat, or something like that. Some combination of things. And every dish is the same thing. I think all television in some ways is about formality and informality, that you have a certain amount of formality, but then chaos breaks out and it really works. Whereas if you've got a completely chaotic format and chaos ensues, it doesn't matter. You need the format. And, you know, Dave and the whole Barstool, you know, organization, it has its own rules.
Definitely.
It has its rules of what things look like, how things are done, how things aren't done. And then that allows the chaos to like sort of like break out amongst those sort of set series of parameters.
Yeah, it was TV our way. And then I think where Vantalk was tough is that we tried TV our way in a place that wanted TV their way, and in a context of just, it's just kind of like an intolerant context. I think Vantalk was a great show. I thought it was delightful.
Well, I don't know that. I think that Vantalk, look, my view of Barstool Vantalk is that it worked.
It was
the ratings were, it was a great show.
For 1
it was, and that was the one episode that we made. It was a great show. And I think it would have been, over time, it could have been really great. And the ratings on that first episode were superb.
Amazing. Yeah.
Stuck at God knows what time on ESPN2. It was all the other stuff around it. And it's about risk. And I think you said this to me, it's always stuck with me, is you said to me something that Dave said, and this might not have been right afterwards. This might have been, you know, at some period, you know, a few months after, is that Dave didn't want to lease anymore. He only wanted to own. Didn't want to rent, he wanted to own. And that was going to be your media.
Yeah, that was going to be our strategy.
Direction. And that, you know, we were leasing in Barstool.
100%. Both of them.
ESPN. And that wasn't the correct, like it wasn't, and Comedy Central, you're right. And these weren't, ultimately, they weren't the right landlords, but there may not have been a landlord available.
There was no
to go and make that work.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that had either of those shows made it, we would be fractional to what we are now. What is it that what do you see happen? Like, do you call it television anymore? Like, you're building networks, like you're kind of doing the most old school and new school things. So what do you call your world now? How do you see your world?
Well, I'm still a television producer, so I'm very confident saying that, even though a lot of what I do, and, you know, with Men in Blazers also, you know, my soccer brand, a lot of that isn't television.
Yeah.
But I would still say essentially my skills are as a television producer. The world of content, you know, is everything. But, you know, the same things apply. We have to figure out a way to get moving pictures and audio to, you know, super fans. I don't really like that word. I prefer it to communities of interest. I don't like all the ways we describe. I mean, it's why I say to you, Jeopardy is a sport, because our fans are insane about every single little thing that happens in Jeopardy, the way that your fans are insane about every single thing that happens at Barstool, or within Barstool, within the sports that they follow and love, or across the culture that they follow and love. But, you know, it's still about, you know, producing effective video and audio which hit those people, and those are the skills. The biggest change in my career, and it doesn't necessarily make it harder, but it is different, is the you know, and I've had to adjust to, and you've seen me try to adjust to it and sometimes fail, and it's what I continue to work on, is how to adjust to the different cost point of the productions that we make. That is the hardest thing. When I came into television, you know, even the low budget stuff was I mean, the amount of money that would be blown on all sorts of things, and adjusting. I've always been seen as, within the TV business, as a very, very, very low budget producer, but it is still, that is the most challenging thing about making a new form of content. Is actually what I look at Barstool is one of the things that it's one of your great advantages. And it's one of the things that you have actually done unbelievably well, is figured out a way to make, and it's partly because you're not burdened by too many people who've come like me
from other places.
Television, is that you're able to go and produce that content at a cost that is that makes your business work.
When people criticize you, like, what do they say about you?
I always think that people's greatest strengths and their greatest weaknesses are inextricably linked.
Yeah.
And so I often think that, that interview question where you ask people their greatest weaknesses,
Yeah.
actually, it's usually, you may as well ask them what their greatest strengths are, and you
it's
get a
the same
better answer.
difference. Yeah.
So, look, I think if you would, people within the business would probably say my versatility is my greatest strength. I work across a lot of genres, work across a lot of programming, can succeed in a lot of different environments. I think, therefore, my weakness is a lack of focus on one individual thing at a time. And that constant, I've already referred to, getting bored, that ADD that comes from being there. I think I've got a little bit, I think there has been some advantage of age. I'm 56 years old, still in a young person's business.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent, I've been able to get a bit more focused as I've got older, and some of the frenetic energy, I think what Socrates called his tired and frenzied master. Okay. I'm sort of a little bit rid of that.
Really?
That person like sending me all over the place. And I think I'm a bit more focused in every aspect of my life. But that probably makes me a little less interesting.
I don't think so.
So I don't
know.
So
timeless. That's what I love about you. I think that you're like the Englishman in New York. Like, you being a stranger made you right at home. Like, I think that's one of your best qualities. I think because you're foreign, you actually fit, if that makes sense. Like, you were like an interloper with us.
Yeah. I mean, I was also like every other classic British immigrant to the New World in the 17th century. I was an outsider where I came from.
Yeah.
I'm from Southeast London, not the part of London where, every American tourist goes. I just wasn't. Most people, when I went to university in Scotland, most people thought I was American. Like, they had no idea that I was English because they couldn't really process where I was from. So I've always felt like a little bit of an outsider. And I think that is the essential quality of the American migrant. I bought into America locked,
you're like, I get that mentality.
Smoking barrels. I loved it. The frontier thesis works for me. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk soccer. How do you feel about Chelsea right now? Are you behind that coach? That coach is so obnoxious. Jesus.
Oh my God, has the whole of Barstool gone Tottenham crazy? I think this is, you've all gone Tottenham crazy. It is so, oh my God, it's such a cliche. Like, I remember when Bill Simmons signed on for Tottenham. It's like the most obvious choice for any American. Look, all sport is so subjective. And so I've actually found Thomas Tuchel, our coach, incredibly boring. I've been quite publicly, I'm not haven't been a huge fan of his.
And it's so interesting, Michael, like the fans are interesting, the way they sing, the trade system and relegation. Like, it's so smart. It's a smart league. It's a smart sport.
Look, I think it's always been interesting. But it was, for years, I think it's been this good for a long time. It hasn't always been this good. I mean, Premier League is not, I think it was founded in 1992. It's not super old, but there was a Division 1 before that. So the Premier League, I would say, for the first few years, they started, like, TV rights started becoming a thing. They started bringing in some better international players, because before that, it'd been mainly sort of English and Scottish and Welsh and Irish footballers. There hadn't been anybody else from the British Isles. And then suddenly you started seeing some French, some Italian, some sort of great players come in. Then the TV rights started exploding, but it happened internationally before the US. You were still basically giving away the Premier League in America until probably the beginning of the 2000s. It was like a free deal. Fox used to have a whole network that they used to show it in standard def, but you couldn't get it in many places. And then suddenly the TV rights, and now the pitches start getting better. The coaching starts getting better.
Everything's better.
The ball starts getting better. The training, like, everything starts moving, and soccer itself gets better. I always laugh at people who get very sort of glassy-eyed about the football they grew up watching in the 70s and 80s. Go back and look at the tapes. It was terrible.
It's like women's hockey. It's like the ball, it's like an ant,
It was awful, the soccer. It was played in mud, largely. Like, it was literally, in some ways that was great, but like, everybody was covered in mud. If you look just search like English football mud 1970s, and all you will find is literally players caked in mud trying to sort of chase a ball around a stadium.
Yeah, like a pigsty.
So Everything, floodlights, evening games, building the schedule, building an early game, a later game, Sunday games, like everything designed for TV, the shoulder coverage, all the things.
Everything.
And so really it's really been this good for the last, dozen or more years, but it's taken some people some time to really catch on. NBC have done an absolutely incredible job.
I agree.
With the coverage, with the way that they've broadcast it.
The way they slice it, it's so smart. Catching up to the live game, they've done an amazing job.
Every single thing they've done at NBC, every decision they've made has been, I would say, good. Sometimes from the outside, we tend to see, it's just the big person at the top.
Person, It
really takes a village. Having worked at ABC, it takes a village at a network to really get behind something. And I think they were really
They're so behind it. It's so awesome. They're so behind it.
And so I think the production, they don't do all the production. A lot of the production is from Sky and, BT Sport in the UK. So a lot of the production comes from there. And that production is superb. But they've really handled it very well. It happens at a time of day, which is so good for American time zones.
You wake up and it's like wake and bake.
Except for that early game for West Coast fans, that early game, which happens at 4:30 in the morning, is difficult. But for the 7:30, to be able, as Roger always says, to be able to get up, drink beer, and watch football in the morning, it's like it's a great tradition.
All right, Micheal Davies, what's next for you? Like, what's next? I'm going to apply to Jeopardy after this.
I would love to analyze your anytime test. I'd love to see where it is that Erika specializes. I see you more as somebody who shouts at contestants when you think that they're dumb and answers comes up with the question after everybody else and finds yourself very smart. It's hard. So what's next for me? No, really, we've built a postseason on Jeopardy. So, for 38 years, the show's been on the air, and they've only run the Tournament of Champions, which is the big event at the end of the year. They've only run it about 27 times. They haven't even done it every year, and it's always been in different months. So I fixed a postseason for Jeopardy. Great. So we're going to go from a second chance tournament, which is like our wild card playoffs, where people get a second chance who we thought were awesome, and then we go into this unprecedented Tournament of Champions. We just announced the structure. We have buys. We have there's some multiple competitors, multiple rounds, and we've got these super champions, Amy, Matt, and Mateo, who are going to compete, and it's going to be huge on television in October and November. So I love all of this.
Okay, so that was Micheal Davies. Now I think you can probably understand why everyone is in love with Micheal Davies. Speaking of things that you're in love with, some people are in love with the stock market. Zingeroo is an awesome product. Zingeroo makes investing social. So high quality, very safe. You download the app, it enables you to invest, and the best part yet is that you can compete against your friends to see who's a better investor. So the net of it is that Zingeroo is an all-in-one trading app that makes investing competitive, social, and educational. If you go to the App Store, you can download the Zingeroo app, and Zingeroo will give you $25 to start your trading. And you can also join our Barstool Premium Zone. If you join Zingeroo, not only do you get $25 to invest, you can trade and compete in one app for a chance to win $1,000 in ETF prizes. Securities offered by Z Squared Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC. All right, so let's talk about being acquired and being part of change. So obviously, Barstool's in the process of being acquired right now. I think the question I get from everyone, and I actually think more people don't ask it than do ask it, is what does this mean for me? Am I going to go be like a corporate wonk at Penn? Am I going to lose my job? What's going to happen to my career? What does this mean for my day-to-day work life? I've obviously had those questions myself. So I think it's natural at a point of an acquisition to have some anxiety. What I would say to anyone listening to this from Barstool Sports is that there are parts of Barstool that are never, ever, ever going to change and shouldn't change. I am so fierce about this company. I'm fierce about the brands we've built. I'm fierce about the type of people we have. I think the way we do things is truly revolutionary. I think it's brilliant, and I will protect that at all costs. Now, there's obviously things that are going to have to change. PENN is a publicly traded company. We need to make sure our financial systems roll into PENN's financial systems. PENN needs a 5-day close versus a 14-day close. Okay, great. Our finance people can figure out how to do a 5-day close. But PENN did not acquire Barstool to go be integrated and become PENN. PENN bought Barstool because Barstool was a conduit to being in the sports betting business. It gave them an incredible brand to work with, and that's the Barstool Sports brand. It created a marketing platform that is, as I'd mentioned, revolutionary and so compelling and so organic and frankly unbeatable in so many ways. When you look at PENN changing the name to PENN Entertainment, in my opinion, that shows where PENN is going, which is more in our direction than going back to, a regional casino business or a more physical business. So obviously, when you're part of an acquisition, things change, things evolve. I choose to believe that things can really grow and it can create a huge amount of opportunity for us. Our salespeople complain all the time about not having enough to sell. Well, guess what? Now you can sell the score. Our live events people are like, hey, how do we find more places to do classics and golf tournaments? Well, now we can do that across 41 casinos. Our finance people are like, hey, it's really a pain in the ass that we don't have any systems or infrastructure. Well, now we have some. Our HR people are like, our benefits are okay, but they could be better. Okay, great. Now we have a benefits platform to work with. So I think there's some real positives. I think being in an acquisition, it's all attitude. And it's also being perceptive about what's happening around you. Chris Licht just spoke with the CNN folks because I am obsessively reading about the Warner Media stuff. And he basically had a meeting with employees, and there were two things about it that struck me. One was that he was like, hey, things are gonna change, you might not like it, and you might not understand it. Now, to this guy's credit, he walked into kind of a shit show. There's a lot of talent at CNN. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of wokeness. There's a lot of opinion about what CNN should be or shouldn't be. There's a lot of conspiracy theory. There's a lot of people, period. I didn't love how he said that you might not understand it. I felt like it was kind of patronizing to people. I would never talk about an acquisition that way. I think as an executive, your job is to make people understand it. Now, I agree with him. People might not like it and people should take it or leave it. But I didn't love that tonality. And then the other thing was, so apparently the news of Brian Stetler, who's the host of Reliable Sources, who got fired last week, apparently the news leaked to the press, and the press had it before CNN employees had it. And he called it gross and inhumane, which I thought was so funny because I'm like, that's how life is. Like, I can remember being at Yahoo in like 2000 nothing, and Kara Swisher knew what was happening at Yahoo before anyone at Yahoo knew what was happening at Yahoo. And the reality is, when you have a company that big and people are not bought into the vision, they're not loyal to the company, they don't feel like they're part of making it great, of course they're going to talk to the press. So that's a more tumultuous acquisition. I think the Barstool acquisition will be way more straightforward, way more streamlined, and honestly, way more simple. We're also not trying to cut $3 billion in savings, so that's helpful. But long story short, if you're in the middle of an acquisition, here's my advice. One is, be really clear about what your job is and what your function is, and be smart. If you have a job that is the same exact job that somebody has somewhere else in the company that you're going to be a part of, be really clear about what makes your job different. How is your job different? How is your job specific? How is your job critical to the function of your company? If there are a lot of people that have the same job as you, chances are there's going to be consolidation. Consolidation is a great time to ask yourself a couple questions. One, do you want to be part of the new consolidated group? Two, if so, how do you get to be at the top of it? And three, What is it about what you do, how you do it, where you do it, and who you do it with that's going to make you invaluable about that process? I think the second thing in an acquisition is nobody's going to value the people who just spend all day, like on the gossip train or in the coconut telegraph of like, ooh, what's going to happen? Do you think this person is safe? Do you think that person is safe? Gossiping is basically tantamount to complaining about your job. The people who will get cut first, in my opinion, are always the people who are the least productive. So be productive. If your company's getting acquired or you just got acquired or you're in the middle of a merger and you want to keep your job, you know what the best thing to do is? Do your job. The third is to ask smart questions. So ask your management, what's the vision for this acquisition? Why are you doing it? What's the expectation of me or my group? What's the expectation of our division of the company? What's the future look like for the acquired company and the parent company? Like, ask good, smart questions. Read the public filings. Pay attention to the news. Like, be smart about what's happening at your company or at the parent company who just bought you, and ask good questions of people. Don't ask stupid questions. Don't ask questions that just buy into the gossip. Ask productive questions that help you make a decision on, do you still want to work there? And can you be at the top of the heap? Third thing I would say is be proactive. If you handle vendors, if you're in a job where you work with a lot of external suppliers, make a list of the suppliers. Be able to defend why you use company X or system Y. Be organized and be proactive in terms of, hey, I understand what the company's trying to do. I understand why you acquired our company. Here's some recommendations for making the company even better. Here are things that are in my world that I could do that contribute to the larger vision at hand. And those are really my tips for managing an acquisition. All right, so we're talking about change, we're talking about acquisition. We heard from Micheal Davies, who's really talking about how he's thinking about revolutionizing one of the oldest shows on television. So the Q&A today is about change. First one, how do you know the difference between change you should sit through or when you should leave the company? Ooh, this is a tough one. I like change. I struggle to sit through change. And in my career, I think one of the things I did do well was I knew when to leave a company. I think the difference between change that you should sit through and change that you should run from is whether or not the change is positive. Do you buy into the vision? Do you trust the leaders that you have? Do you agree with where the company is going? Do you see potential for yourself? If any or most of those answers are yes, then it's probably change that you should work through. If you don't believe in management, if you don't like where the company is going, if you disagree with the vision or you get the sense that the culture is not for you or that you won't see more opportunity, you should leave. I think the worst thing to do, though, is to just run from a job and hop to another one without really running to something. I think the biggest and best thing you can do is make the decision on if you want to be part of the change or not. If the answer is yes, awesome, go rock it. If the answer is no, find the new thing to run through. Don't just react to where you're coming from. Second question, I'm considering asking to change offices from one city to another. Awesome. How do I go about asking my boss about this? Okay, this one's pretty easy. I would get a one-on-one with your boss. I would say, hey, I love this company. I've learned so much. Here's what I've accomplished here. Depending on how formal your boss is, you can be really buttoned up on that or you could be kind of casual. I would, even if you're casual, I would have it written down and I would be succinct. And then I would say, I'm considering a life change. I would like to move from Boston to Minneapolis. I'd like to move from Santa Barbara to New York. And I see that there's opportunities in New York in a similar function to what I have here. I think I could do this job very well in the new city. You have to be specific on this point. You've got to like really crush why you're going to be great in a city that's different from where you live now. And I also think you need to be specific about why this is good for the company, not just good for you. And if you can land the plane on all of that, then your boss will probably say yes. I also think, though, in having this conversation, you need to be prepared that your boss may say no. And then you've got to make a decision on, are you moving regardless, or are you moving only if a job exists for you in your current company in a new city? So have that answer first, be prepared, and then see where the conversation goes. All right, last one. How do you deal with a poorly communicated reorg that leadership loves and employees hate? Ooh, this is a good one. One is change is hard for a lot of people. Two is, my experience anyways, is most people are really shitty communicators. And three, I think most management teams underestimate the need for communication. Not only one-to-many communication like emails or company meetings or blasting stuff out, but really important one-on-one communication, checking in with people, talking to people, getting people's input. I think in the case where your company is going through a reorganization, which generally means roles are going to be cut, people are going to be shifted, things are going to be different than they were the day before. I think the biggest thing to do is to ask yourself is it just the communication that's poor, or is it the changes that are poor? If it's just the communication that's poor, you have to decide whether you can forgive your management team of that or not and go on your merry way. If the decision making is poor, then you have a bigger question at hand, which is, do you want to be part of this company? I think if you're really motivated to stay and be invested in this company long term or even midterm, it's worth having a conversation with management to say, hey, I think I understand what you're trying to do. I think there's some gaps in how this is being explained, which is creating confusion or creating concern. Sometimes management teams care what employees think. Oftentimes they don't, right? The CNN thing, the email to the company was basically like, I don't give a shit if you like this or not. This is what's happening. And by the way, you might not understand it, which is your problem, not ours. So I think management teams just in general aren't good at this. And I think the question for you in dealing with it is, do you want to be part of the solution and help them understand where there's some gaps and how they might bridge them? Or is this just a huge red flag and you should get out the door? So let's talk about Shady Rays. I love Shady Rays. I am at the end of the summer. Yesterday, I went and got all of my glasses cases, and I am missing 8 pairs of eyeglasses. But thankfully, I have Shady Rays, so I have like 25 pairs of the same sunglasses, so I don't ever feel like I'm missing my sunglasses. Why do I have Shady Rays? One, they're great quality. They're super sturdy. I can sit on them. The dogs can walk on them. I can't really drive a car over them, but it feels like they are such high quality that you can basically beat the shit out of your sunglasses and they still stay intact. The other great thing about Shady Rays is they have a money-back guarantee. The third thing that's great is they have a great variety and selection. And the fourth is that they're affordable. So if you go to shadyrays.com and use code TOKEN, you get 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. So summer is not exactly over yet. So if you want new sunglasses, you want a great deal, go to shadyrays.com, use code TOKEN, and you get 50% off 2 or more pairs of sunglasses. How cool is that? Closing out what we're doing today, we have a huge week here at Barstool. It's the last week before college football starts. So college football starts this weekend. I feel like it's one of those weeks where everyone else is on vacation and everyone here is stressed to the max. Like, we haven't even gotten to football season yet, but everyone is stressed. We have our company meeting on Thursday, which I'm psyched about. So speaking of all the things we talked about here, change, acquisition, production, comedy, sports, you name it. We have our company meeting on Thursday, which is really, we do this twice a year to just rally the company around what's happening. Dave will be here, which I'm psyched about. There's a lot of people who need to meet Dave, which I'm excited to make happen. And then I always just love when we bring everyone together. It's just invigorating. So we have our company meeting, we have our company party, and then I am knee deep in mid-year reviews. So I think one of the funny things about when you get acquired is, like, who gives you your mid-year review? In our case, the Barstool people are pretty locked and loaded. Since I've been at Barstool, my reviews really aren't mid-year reviews. We have a review every quarter, right, which is our board meeting. And I used to get, we'll give a bunch of tips in a second, but I used to be nervous, emotional, afraid of feedback, like all of the things that I think are hard in having a great performance review. I used to feel like that going into every board meeting. So in my case, I think, my reviews ultimately will be with Jay, who's the CEO of PENN, which I'm excited about. The reviews I'm giving, I'm giving George, our CFO, a review. I'm giving Kim, our Chief People Officer, a review. I'm giving Gaz a review. I'm giving Stu, our head of product, a review. Pete, All Business Pete gets a review. Deb, who does communications with us, she has a review. Alex, who does commerce, will have a review. So, and my real philosophy around performance reviews is that nothing should really be a surprise. I had Gaz's review yesterday. Gaz does social for us and really runs a lot of our distribution. And it was kind of like a non-conversation because I talk to Gaz every day. And I like that. I think it's a good opportunity to kind of rise above the usual things you talk about. It's a good occasion to have a little bit more formality with one another in terms of like, hey Gaz, what's next for you? What are you thinking about? How do we solve for, these are things I'm trying to solve. How can you help me? I really like the mid-year review time because I think it's a great time to just kind of step outside of yourself and step outside of the day-to-day and be like, whoa, where am I? What am I doing? And most importantly, what do I need and what do I want? I think the mid-year review, I woke up really early on Saturday last weekend and I was like on my computer writing all of my mid-year review feedback. And one of the things I think about a lot is that a mid-year review should be really comfortable. I think a mid-year review is really important, especially at a time where you're in the middle of change, or in our case, we've been making a lot of change this entire year. And I'm excited to have conversations with people, both good conversations and bad conversations. So before I let you go, here's my tips, or here's my perspective on having a great mid-year review. There's probably a lot of people who are listening to this who are also in their mid-year reviews. There may be a lot of people who are going through changes at their company or changes in their life or changes in where they want to live. A mid-year review is just an expression for a one-on-one, a little bit higher level that's more about your overall performance versus a specific project or task at hand. And so regardless if your company does mid-year reviews or not, I think it's always a really great thing to do once or twice a year, or maybe 3 to 4 times a year, to check in with your boss and get a sense of how are things going? Am I doing a good job? Is this what you're looking for? And to share your ideas both on what your boss can do better or what your boss can do to help you be successful, but also your ideas on where your group, where your division, or where your company can go. So for anyone who's about to have a review, who needs a review, or you're walking into your review, here's my advice. One is prepare. Like, even if the conversation is super casual, maybe it's happening over lunch, maybe it's happening over drinks, maybe it's happening on a couch, maybe it's happening in a more formal setting, be prepared. Have what you've accomplished this year written down. Have what your questions are of your manager written down. Have your vision and your recommendations written down. Regardless if you refer to your notes in the meeting or not, it helps you get organized in your thinking, which will help you have a better meeting. The second is to relax. So I think when you're more prepared, you can be more relaxed. You're more confident about what you have to say. You can be more specific in what you're looking for, and you feel more confident and in control. I think it's hard to have a review if you're feeling nervous or you're feeling apprehensive or you're feeling anxious. Obviously, a lot of that is just natural in being in a performance review because, let's be honest, somebody's reviewing your performance. But the more relaxed you can be, the more confidence you can exude, and the more in control of the conversation you are, the better off that review will go. 3 is to listen. A lot of times, I think people don't want feedback. They don't want to hear what somebody else has to say about them, either because you're so insecure or you're so nervous or you're so defensive. Try to walk that back in yourself and really hear what your manager has to say in a review. Truly listen to what's being said. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, doesn't mean you have to do it, but do a good job of listening. The 4th is make it conversational, right? Whether you're the manager or you're the employee, don't just read the form that you put in Zenefits or whatever your HR system is. Have a real human conversation with people. I hate when you get into a meeting with someone and they just read what's on a sheet. It's like, you might as well just fucking email me. So be conversational. The next 2 are don't be emotional. If you have a bad review, there is plenty of time to go cry in the bathroom after you've had your review. There's plenty of time to go get drunk with your friends and be like, I hate my job. There's plenty of time to celebrate and be there's plenty of time to celebrate or to feel victory and winning, but try to be calm. Try to be clear and calm and dispassionate in a review. It makes for the most productive conversation. Speaking of, in a review, you're probably going to get some feedback that you don't want. My friend Micheal says, take feedback like Tom Brady, which I love. Great reminder that Tom Brady, one of the greatest of all time, gets criticized by his coaches. Those are reviews. Take feedback like a goat. Be ready for it, be open to it, listen to it. Don't react immediately to it. Don't be emotional about it. Take feedback and ingest it, and then own it and be humble. So whether you're given more opportunity, come back with the plan of it. Whether you're given something you have to change, take that feedback and respond to it, but have a plan coming out of the review. The review isn't something in and of itself. It's a conversation about your career, about your performance, about how you and your manager work together. And it's most important, a conversation about the future. So have a plan for your future. All right, that's enough for today. I feel like we did a lot. You can follow me at Erika on Instagram. You can follow Token CEO wherever you can follow people. Don't forget to leave us a rating and give us a review. You can have a mid-year with me if you want. I'll take the feedback. I'll give you some too. And we will see you back here next week. And just a huge thank you to Micheal Davies for being part of this.